we're live streaming. We were the first location in the Virginia section of the ACS to do live streaming. This is our third year streaming meeting, so yay, digital auditorium. Amen. Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Hurley Conversion Center at the University of Mary Washington. My name is Janet Asper. I'm professor of chemistry here at the University of Mary Washington. I'm also your alternate counselor for the Virginia local section of the American Chemical Society, and I also serve for the ACS on the Committee on Community Activities. If any of you are familiar with Mole Day, not Mole Day, National Chemistry Week and Chemists Celebrate Earth Week, and have ever used any of the ACS resources for those two celebrations, my committee actually writes and develops all of those resources. And it's my great pleasure to invite all of you to Fredericksburg tonight. Tonight we have the amazing pleasure of inviting back an alum to talk to us about some of the amazing things he's done since being well trained here at UMW. But I'm actually going to let one of our own students do that introduction. So it's my great pleasure to hand the mic over to Allison Burgess, who's a junior chemistry major here at UMW. I had the pleasure of having Allison in organic chemistry and experimental methods, and she is UMW made. So again, welcome. If you do need to use restrooms, they would be around the corner and out. You go a little bit down the hall and to the left, just past the elevators. Our exits are marked on the off chance we would need to evacuate. I did do some research with the DoD for a couple years, and I got used to being told how to evacuate a facility, so I always throw that in. But Allison, please.
Hi everyone, thanks Dr. Asper. So today our speaker is Jerry Podorsky, and he's a chemist instructor at the DEA Academy at Quantico, Virginia. And he graduated from Mary Washington College in 2000 with a bachelor's in chemistry, and he also assists with the UMW men's rugby team. So I will hand it over.
Oh, we got this one. Thanks, Allison. So good evening. How is everyone? Good. It's a little surreal coming back home to Mary Washington. For me, Mary Washington College. I know it's University of Mary Washington now. We can use the term. Can we just say Mary Washington? Is that all encompassing? But I was saying at dinner, it's almost like my senior seminar, having all my old professors lined up. And I'm just waiting to go through this presentation and then get all the questions at the end and having to defend my work. So hopefully I pass. So as Allison said, my name is Jerry Podorsky, and I graduated year 2000 from here. And I was excited to get the chance to come back and talk at this meeting because there were two meetings I attended similar to this where it got me involved and kind of got me where I am now, to realize there's other jobs outside academics and research, and there's some pretty cool jobs out in forensics, chemistry land, okay? So I started DEA in 2002. So I was a high school chemistry teacher. So let me back up. Who likes Breaking Bad? All right, so the whole crowd, good. My life is pretty much like Breaking Bad, but I get paid a lot less. Okay. So I started as a high school chemistry teacher, and shortly after 9/11, I thought about going in the military, doing something along those lines, and I applied for a bunch of different government jobs, and I was lucky enough to get hired by the DEA. So I got hired about 3 weeks after 9/11 and started in January. So I did about 9 years as a bench chemist, and for DEA, there's 4 core series. So let me just go into that. So you guys are probably familiar with a little bit with DEA, right? You got Hank over on your left from Breaking Bad, right? DEA guy. Then you got who watches Narcos, okay? For Narcos, there's 2 guys playing special agents for the DEA there. Actually, those 2 guys came through our academy for a tour and kind of get to see what a real life of a real DEA agent is like at the academy. But DEA is a sole mission agency. Our only mission is drugs. Okay, we don't go after guns, white-collar crime. All we deal with is illegal drugs and also listed drugs. Okay, so if you go to a doctor's office or pharmacy, you'll see on the wall they have a DEA license. Okay, so they get inspected by us. So there are 4 core series with DEA. There's chemists, which I put them first because they're most important. Okay, about 400 of us. Okay, we have diversion investigators. Those are the guys that look into doctors' offices, pharmacies, methadone clinics, make sure they're not selling things out the back door. Chemical companies, okay, they could sell some chemical precursors used to make different illegal drugs. Then we have intelligence analysts who look at linking cases together by phone numbers, contacts, PDAs, that type of thing. And of course, with the bulk of our agency is about 5,000 agents. Okay, those are the guys you think of when you think of DEA. That we call them the gun toters. Okay, those are the guys that go out and buy drugs off the street and actually make cases. Okay, so we all work together. We all kind of work in concert together with DEA. So as a forensic chemist, the first 9 years of my job, we like to say is cranking widgets. Okay, so basically when an agent would go out and buy drugs, they would submit it to the laboratory. Okay, in a heat seal evidence envelope, a plastic envelope. I would go check it out from the vault. I would take it back to my bench, cut it open, start my analysis. Okay, I'd see how much it weighed, run a series of tests. So I would do a gas chromatograph, I would do an infrared, I would do a mass spec, HPLC, now UPLC. I could run NMR to determine what's in that sample. Okay, what the drug is, how pure it is. And then I would go to court and testify. And the other part of my job, which I love the best, was actually going into meth labs. Okay, so I would wear this gear like you see in front of me. I brought a bunch of props I'll talk about later on. Get suited up in this equipment, go into a methamphetamine house or trailer, dismantle a drug laboratory, take samples, figure out the production capacity of that laboratory, what way were they making, what drugs were they making, what routes, and then go into court and testify on my findings, and then probably going against a defense expert, okay, that they would try to undermine either my calculations or what methods the guy was using. So when you go into a meth lab and you arrest a bad guy, they want to tell you they're the best chemist ever, right? Like oh, Breaking Bad's got nothing on me. My stuff's better than Eisenberg's. My stuff's the best, okay? Until you get them in court, then they're the dumbest person ever. Okay, then their stuff is the worst, okay, because they don't want to get sentenced, because the more you make, the more time you get. So that's DEA. What we're going to talk about today, though, is the opiate crisis, okay? So this is, well, let me say what my job is now, what I did. So I did 9 years on the bench, and then I went down to our training academy, and I trained people, state and local officers, our special agents, our chemists, how to go do what I used to do. Go into methamphetamine labs, take samples. Remember I said I was almost like Breaking Bad? So my job was to make methamphetamine in the lab. So I would take all the police officers in the laboratory I had in my building, and we'd make methamphetamine, start to finish. We'd start with all the precursors, and we'd split into groups. All the cops would go hands-on, and we'd produce methamphetamine. The reason is, well, there's different types of learners, okay? You could have visual learners like we're doing now, and then you have people who are hands-on. That's most of our police officers, okay? They're not, you can show them stuff on the screen, but it doesn't really take hold unless they hold it, feel it, touch it, okay? So that kind of, helps them learn, but also gives them the expertise to get entered as an expert witness in court. So they can go into court and say, the defense attorney goes, well, what do you know about making methamphetamine? Well, I've made it. Okay, there's nothing better than that for the jury. Okay, I've made methamphetamine. So along those lines, I would talk about along the way, here's where you need to be careful. Here's where explosions occur. Here's where it's a good place to take samples. Okay, we would talk about dismantling and evidence collection while we're making the methamphetamine. So it wasn't just a, hey, it's a neat show and tell, which it is. I mean, how many people can say they got paid to make methamphetamine legally? Okay. It's probably more people have walked on the moon. But yeah, that's kind of what my job was. And then I, for 3 years, trained our basic forensic chemists, so people that are just getting hired on. So I did that for about 3 years. And now for the past 3 years, I do international training, which it was luckily enough, I was home during this window because I just got off of 6 weeks on the road straight. So in the past, well, since I started with DEA, I've been to 69 countries. Trying to think, I've been, you name the continent except for Antarctica, I've been there and I've done training. So that's usually what I teach overseas is clandestine laboratory safety, using the protective equipment, chemical methods production. So I talk about chemical precursors, how these different drugs are made, okay, and how to backtrack these chemicals to these companies that are selling these things illegally. And then most recently, and I'll talk about it a little bit later, is the emerging trends, okay? So it's all the new drugs that are out there. So in the past 7 years, there have been 750 new drugs invented. And so we'll talk about it. I want you guys, the theme for tonight is think like a bad guy, okay? So what's the most important to the bad guy? Money, right? So money and then not getting caught. You have to be able to spend the money. So for the bad guys, you make all this money, but you don't want to get caught. And so every country in the world has a list of banned substances. There's a reason we can go buy ibuprofen, but we can't buy cocaine, right? Well, not legally. So you can go in, and there's a list of banned substances for all these different countries. There's cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine. But what happens if the new drug you're selling is not on that banned list? Can you get prosecuted? Well, it depends. The answer is most of the time yes. If you knowingly sell it as a drug, you can get put behind bars. But it's harder. It's a lot harder to do that. So that's why the bad guys do it. Because you know how long it takes for us to put substances on our banned list? The minimum amount of time is about 6 months. Okay, so that means 6 months someone's selling drugs for free. Well, like I said, it's more difficult to prosecute them. And so by that time, there's 5 new designer drugs been invented since then. So we're playing catch up all the time. And I'll talk about that more with the opiate crisis. So let's go through some terminology here. What is an opiate? Okay, it's derived from or acts like something similar to the opium, which comes from the poppy plant that you see here. So that top right picture, you see the bulb, that green bulb, that is an opium poppy. Okay, and I'll get you some more up-close views here in a minute. But what you see there, that's actually Afghanistan, okay? And that's from a plant. That's the bulb of opium poppy before it flowers, okay? So they take a razor blade and they cut the outside of that bulb. And what you're seeing there, what he's scraping off, is what we call pure opium latex, okay? Or do we have any Game of Thrones fans? Okay, when somebody gets hurt, what do they give them? Milk of the poppy, okay? Because what comes out when you first cut the bulb, it comes out white. So it looks like milk. So they say milk of the poppy when you watch Game of Thrones. Okay, so that's where that term comes from. Now, so we have natural opiates, which comes directly from opium. Opium is made of 5 major alkaloids, plant alkaloids. You have morphine, codeine, noscapine, papaverine, and thebaine. Whew. You guys get those? That's on your test later, okay? But it's just a mixture of things, okay? So what comes out of the plant is a kind of a white, milky substance. It oxidizes when you leave it, okay? And they come back with a knife and they scrape it up. And that's pure opium, okay? So the stuff we use out of opium is mostly the morphine and codeine, okay? That's the painkillers, okay? And then you have your semi-synthetics. Those are where you take those products and you're going to add another chemical to it and change it into a different drug. And usually it's going to be more powerful, okay? So that's where we have a lot of our pharmaceuticals. Hydrocodone, Hydromorphone, Oxycodone, okay? I'm sure you guys have heard of these before if you've ever had surgeries, okay? Or hurt yourself real bad, okay? And the last one's heroin, okay? So a lot of places around the world will call heroin diacetylmorphine, okay, because they add a chemical acetic anhydride to the morphine and convert it to heroin. It's more powerful. And then what we have now is the fully synthetics, okay? So those are fentanyl, which have you guys heard of fentanyl before? Okay, that's our growing problem. That's what I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about tonight. And methadone. If you guys ever heard of methadone clinics, that's where they try to treat someone who's addicted to opiates. Okay, the reason it's fully synthetic, first developed by the Germans during World War II, because they couldn't get a source of natural opium to treat their soldiers. So their scientists developed methadone to allow them to do surgeries during the time of war. So that's where that came from. Okay? The problem with any of these opiates, okay, is that they are physically addictive. Okay? So if you use them, you can quickly develop a physical dependence on them. Okay, and that's why the problem we have today. That's why we're in this crisis. Okay, so this is, and I don't exaggerate when I say it's unprecedented. This crisis that we're in now. Okay, the prescriptions of opiates since the early 90s have increased hundreds of times. Okay, a lot of this has to do with in the late 80s, early 90s. The pharmaceutical companies went to the doctors and said, you have to treat pain, okay? You can't allow your patients to be in pain. You have to treat it. You have to numb it. You have to improve their quality of life. Prior to this time, opiates were used for surgeries, okay? And for people that were towards the end of life, people in hospice, people who are dying of cancer, they would give them these opiates to treat the pain as they were getting towards the end of life, okay? Where the pain outweighed the risk of addiction, okay? But then you had the drug companies who referenced two scientific papers that proved not to be very accurate and said, don't worry about prescribing opiates, they're not addictive, okay? They are, they're very addictive, okay? So the prescriptions have gone up and up and up. Because what do you see on TV? What do you see in ads? Since the early 90s, you can look at any newspaper or any magazine and you see ads for drugs, right? So, and another problem too when we have pharmaceuticals, when you have an antibiotic, what do they tell you on the bottle? Finish the entire bottle, right? Right? You're familiar with seeing that? So we get in this habit of just finishing the bottle because that's what we're told to do, okay? You don't need to do that with opiates, okay? You're not killing a bacteria that's in your body. But if you finish the bottle and you don't need it, okay? For instance, I had ankle surgery in January. And I was on fentanyl to go under, okay? And then I was prescribed Oxycodone when I was during recovery. I was given a 2-week supply. How much did I actually need? About a day and a half, okay? So after I knew that Motrin would work, I switched over because I am aware of the risks because I see it all the time, okay? But most people, when they get prescribed something, they want to finish the bottle. Take 2 a day until complete. And that starts that physical dependence. Okay? So what we see, oh, that's a typo. According to CDC, it's not 22,000, that's 42,000. Okay? 42,000 opioid deaths in 2016. Okay? We'll compare that numbers to some of the other ones here coming up. So I know this is a busy graph, but we're going to start with the top one, prescriptions. What I want you to see is from that, it's kind of the grayish squares, going from 98 all the way up to 2012, you saw a steady increase in the amount of opiates that were prescribed, okay? And then DEA kind of went on a campaign to educate the doctors and say, hey, this is causing problems. You need to cut back the prescriptions, okay? So it's kind of an education campaign. And now the prescriptions are going down. But if you look at the deaths versus for any opioids, okay, you see that kind of skyrocket. That's because our opiates that are out there now are getting more and more powerful, okay? They're easier and easier to overdose, okay? Okay, then next one down, deaths due to synthetic opiates. And that's the trend with all of our illegal drugs. Everything is going synthetic, okay? So think about this. Marijuana, cocaine, heroin, where do they all come from? Plants, right? Marijuana, of course, is a plant. You see these leaves all the time on people's bumper stickers. Cocaine comes from the coca plants, okay? Heroin, I showed you, comes from the opium poppy. Now, that takes lots and lots of acres of land, lots and lots of manpower. So if you're planting plants, you're tied to one location, okay? You got to pay those farmers. You have to worry about rival cartels coming and stealing your crops. You have to worry about drought. You have to worry about insects, okay? Now, what about methamphetamine? Where's methamphetamine come from? You guys, Breaking Bad, where's that from? Well, back of a van. But what chemical? Do you guys know? Pseudoephedrine, right. When you guys go to the pharmacy, do you present your ID, right? That's since 2005, Combat Methamphetamine Act, 2005. You have to present your ID. You're limited to 2 boxes per month. No more than 5 boxes in your possession. I can bore you all night if you guys want. But it's from pseudoephedrine, okay? Is there a growing season for pseudoephedrine? No, okay? You can make methamphetamine, like she said, in a back of a trailer. You can make it anywhere. You can make it on a boat. You can make it at mobile locations like you see in Breaking Bad, okay? There's no growing season for these synthetics, and that's why we see the bad guys going to it. You just have to get the chemicals and then mix them together, okay? There's no extraction from plants. So that's why we see the synthetics going through the roof right now, okay? And then you see the deaths, see for the natural ones, but look at the deaths of natural versus synthetics. You're going to see a big split, okay? And we'll talk about why that happens here in a minute, okay? So the big trend with all of these is going to synthetics. So let's talk about the addiction to opiates for a second. So what we usually see are people prescribed opiates for pain, okay? They become physically addicted, okay? And then what they start to do is doctor shopping. They go from doctor to doctor. I've got back pain. I've got wrist pain. My teeth hurt. I need more opiates, okay? Doctors eventually cut them off. And then they go to the street, okay? And they start buying pharmaceuticals off the street, which is very expensive. Oxycodone tablets will go for about $1 a milligram of active ingredient. So if you have Oxycodone 80s, that's $80 a pill, okay? And the thing about opiates, the more you take them, the more you build up tolerances to them. So the same pill that got you high yesterday is not going to get you the same high today. So they start buying them off the street. Like I said, that becomes cost prohibitive. And then they turn to heroin because heroin's cheaper. It's still an opiate, okay, but it's cheaper. So that's where we're kind of seeing now. Okay? Now this blew my mind. I'm not, like I said, I'm a chemist, I'm not a pharmacologist, and some of these slides I borrowed from our headquarters. You see there's the world versus USA population. We account for about 4% of the world's population. We account for about half of the hydrocodone usage in the world. Okay? Now you can compare that to all the other opiates. Oxycodone, morphine, methadone, hydromorphone, fentanyl. We range anywhere from 1/3 to 1/2 the use of all the opiates in the world. And we're over 4% of the population. Okay, so you can see the problem. Okay, the rest of the world is not using nearly as much opiates as we are. Now, there are other countries that have problems with opiates, sure. I mean, if you want nightmares tonight, okay, go research a drug that's in Russia called crocodile, called otherwise decimorphine, okay? Your lifespan is about 2 years once you're addicted to that, okay? I'm not going to say anything else. It's crocodile with a K. Just Google search crocodile with a K, Russia drug, okay? And good luck getting to sleep, okay, because your body basically disintegrates. But they have problems with opiates too. It's not just us. When we talk about Afghanistan accounts for over 80% of the world's heroin production or opium production, most of that's not coming to us. Sure, it funds terrorism. Okay, over $300 million a year funds terrorism and the Taliban. But most of that opium and that heroin is not coming to us. It's going to Europe. It's going everywhere else in the world. Most of our heroin's coming from Mexico and Colombia. Okay, so sure, I mean, a small percentage may be coming here, but that's not the reason that's a big problem. The big problem for us is it funds, like I said, it funds $300 million a year in terrorism. All right, so let's compare drug deaths versus loss of war, okay? So these are American military that have been killed in the war. Of course, Civil War, this counts both sides, both North and South, okay? World War II, you have 400,000 Americans killed, servicemen killed. Now compare that to drug overdoses from 99 to 18, or 17. So 18 years, we had over 700,000 people die of drug overdoses. Now look at that down, any opiate during that time. Okay, the vast majority, so you're talking about stimulants, methamphetamine, cocaine, you name the drug, that's all the drug overdose to the top bar. The second one down is just opiates. Okay, and so you're going to see over half of that. So you go all the way down from, like I said, World War II. It's almost it's over what we lost in World War II during an 18-year period. Now World War II is 4 years, 41 to 45. But just the scale. Now let's put it in terms that you may be more comfortable with. Okay. Last year, 72,000 Americans died of drug overdoses. Okay. Now these other graphs you see here, those are the biggest years of loss for that category. So AIDS, the most Americans that died was 1993, 43,000. Okay, drugs, 1995. Drugs, 1993, 40,000. Okay, so we're almost double gun deaths. Okay, and then motor accidents, 1972, 54,000. Okay, by the way, car crash deaths are going back up. Everybody know why? You're texting while driving. Okay, so those are actually going back up. But it's still nowhere near what we lost last year for drug overdoses. So that's why it's a problem. Okay, so this is the scope of the problem that we're dealing with here. So let's talk about famous people that have lost their lives to opiates. Most of these are going to be drug cocktails. Like I said, you've got Michael Jackson, who was on a whole bunch of things. Okay, his doctor was actually arrested and sentenced for prescribing him illegal amounts of controlled substances. Tom Petty, at first I thought it was a heart attack, that's what we were reported, but it was actually a drug cocktail of opiates and cocaine. Okay, it was accidental overdose. Philip Seymour Hoffman, Chris Farley, Heath Ledger, and Prince. Okay, all those guys. Those are just famous people. Okay, there are 2 guys in my unit that have lost their sisters to opiate deaths. They got hooked on painkillers, okay, and they were for DEA. There's 2 guys in my unit have lost siblings due to this problem. Okay, so it hits everyone. I'm sure everyone in this room knows someone that's addicted to drugs. Like I said in the intro, I also told you I help out the rugby team. I've helped out the rugby team probably since 2009. There are guys on the team, not that I know that died, but guys that have dropped out of school because they got addicted to painkillers or drugs. Okay, one of the guys, he's the smartest guy on the team. You know, he just does dimethyltryptamine on the side. I was like, what are you doing? He goes, it makes me think, it expands my mind. Failed out next semester, right? So the point is, it doesn't matter who you are, but you just see like guys that have the world in their hands, right? They've got all the money in the world. They could do, they're famous people, but down to people, like I said, one of my best friends at DEA, his sister died of Oxycodone overdose, you know, while he was working for DEA. So it doesn't matter. It hits everyone. You know, race, color, creed, poverty level. It doesn't matter, this problem. Okay, so let's talk about some of the other opiates. So that's an up-close view of what an opium poppy looks like. Okay, like I said, the guys that are doing it will take a specially designed tool, and it's basically a razor blade that goes in about 1 to 2 millimeters. Now, if you don't score the bulb enough, not all the resin comes out. If you score too deep, all the resin goes into the inside. So they have these tools that are just specially designed that just get the appropriate depth of cut, that they can get the maximum amount of opium out of each poppy. And like I said, that's turned into heroin. Okay, this is in Afghanistan. That's what a field of opium or opium poppies look like under full bloom. So it just looks like a field of flowers. But that is, and like I said, in Afghanistan, that's a whole farm full of opium poppies. Now think about going to each bulb and cutting each one. Okay, so you're working your way down the row, cutting each bulb, waiting a few hours, and you come back with a knife and scrape all that opium. Okay, so it takes a couple acres of land to make a kilo of opium. And it's going to take several kilos of opium to make a kilo of heroin. So that's a lot of manual labor, right? So again, here's a up-close view. That's a better view of like what I say, the milk of the poppy. Okay, that's the, when you first cut it, that's what it looks like. Okay, and that's just raw opium. Okay, and so here's the process. This is actually in Afghanistan. DEA had gone in, and we will pay Afghani cooks to show us the process. Okay, so guys that have retired, okay, we'll pay them to show us. How do you like the siphoning technique? Is that something? Dr. Mahoney, is that what you used to do? But that's the most complicated thing, right? That's well, I do my metric because I teach overseas, 200-liter drum or 55-gallon drum. They heat up a bunch of water, throw in a couple kilos of opium, stir it up, extract out the morphine. It takes about 2 or 3 days to make heroin, right? 2 or 3 days. And then you get, oh, I forgot to warn you guys about the bad photos. Sorry, too late. Addiction. Okay, like I said, the opiates. Now this guy has had his arm amputated due to gangrene, and you can see he's injecting into another open sore. That's the amount of addiction. Now this next photo, or I'll show you a photo later on. So we have guys that their best friend will overdose on heroin or fentanyl. And then they take the same packet and shoot up. Because, oh, if it killed him, it must be good. He can't handle, it's almost like drinking with somebody that's like, you know, in college, you're like, oh, that guy can handle 10 beers, I can do 12. Okay? That's the same thing with opiate users. Okay? If it killed him, I can handle that high. But I'll show you a photo, 2 guys dead next to each other from the same packet. It doesn't make any sense. But so let's go on to fentanyl, because this is another driving force behind this opiate crisis. Okay, so we talked about heroin is the semi-synthetic, right? So you're extracting from morphine, lots of cultivation. Now, fentanyl was first developed in the 1960s by Janssen Pharmaceuticals. Okay, how many people have actually had fentanyl used on them? Couple? Probably more than you think. For childbirth, it's the epidural that's shot in the spine. When you go in for most surgeries, that's what they're going to give you, a fentanyl cocktail to put you under. Okay? It's about 100 times more powerful than morphine, 80 to 100 times more powerful than morphine, and about 50 times stronger than heroin. Okay? So, yeah, it does work. Yeah, it'll put you under. So, again, think like a bad guy. What's easier for you to smuggle? 1 kilo of fentanyl or 50 kilos of heroin? 1 kilo, right? If you're driving a car across the border, can you hide 50 kilos very easily? It's like We Are the Millers, okay? You got stuff stuffed in every orifice of the van, okay? You got 1 kilo. Is the dog trained on fentanyl? The dogs at the border? Okay, because I'll show you what the lethal amount is for a human. It's about 2 milligrams. Now, what's that for a dog? It's probably less than a milligram. They inhale it, they're going to die. So most your drug dogs are not going to be trained on sniffing for fentanyl. Okay, it's used to treat breakthrough pain. Patches, lollipops, powder. Okay, the patches are for people that are in hospice, breakthrough pain and cancer. They put a patch on them. It's got little micro needles in it, and it gives you delivers like microgram doses, okay, through your skin. It's in an alcohol solution that's in the patch, and it goes through. Now, when I first started DEA and I had a fentanyl exhibit, most of the time it's guys digging through the trash and finding these fentanyl patches and sucking on them. Okay, after it's been on someone's arm. Or they take 4 or 5 of them and they put them on their arm. Or they put it into a tea and drink it. Okay, or they cut open the patch and squirt the gel into their mouth. Okay, that's what I would usually see when I first started at DEA for fentanyl. Okay, it's usually diverted pharmaceuticals. They have it in lollipops, so if you're a soldier and you step on a landmine and your leg gets blown off, they duct tape a fentanyl lollipop to your mouth. They put it in your mouth and you pass out, the lollipop comes out. Okay, you start screaming again, you put the lollipop back in your mouth. That's what fentanyl was used for. So worldwide legitimate production It was about 1,700 kilos, 2013. Also used as an incapacitating agent. Who remembers, I think it was 2010, Chechen rebels took over a theater in Moscow. Okay, and they ended up killing a bunch of people, not just the bad guys. So like say we're in an auditorium like this, the Russians started pumping in fentanyl mixtures through the air ducts, and people started collapsing. Okay, they just wanted to knock everyone out, but turns out the dose was a little wrong. So they ended up killing, I think it was close to 100-something people. So, so this is what you see. There's what fentanyl powder looks like. It's like anything else in chemistry. It's a white powder. Okay. There's the fentanyl lollipop. Bad news, only comes in one flavor. It's cherry. Okay, so you don't get the pick. There's the patches. You can see there, and there's a picture of the patch over here. I was just in the Czech Republic teaching a class, and they showed a video of 4 teenagers, and they were having a fentanyl party. They decided to start drinking, and they start popping patches on their arm. Okay, putting 2, 3, 4. Oh, I don't feel anything else. I don't feel anything. Put another patch on. I don't feel anything. Put another patch on. It's time release. Okay, so 2 of them ended up dying. Okay, so this is the lethal dose for fentanyl. Okay, that's for a non-opiate user. Okay, that's the average 200-pound man, non-opiate user overdose. So I have to qualify it. If you're an opiate user, it could be much more than this. But if you inhale that much fentanyl, you will stop breathing. Okay, so that's the problem with fentanyl, is that if you inhale that much. So when we go into laboratories, that's why you see us wear the zombie apocalypse suits, right? Because if we have that much. Now, like I said, it is slightly transdermal too. So if it's the heroin base, what you see there is fentanyl hydrochloride. Okay, that's the salt form. If you have fentanyl base in a liquid, it will go through your skin more readily. So you can get exposed through the skin. So here's the other photo I was talking about, the 2 guys with using. Now, I had a case in 2006. We had a huge uptick in fentanyl in 2006. And what I mean by huge amount was we averaged somewhere around 400 cases a year across the United States for fentanyl illegally. We went up to 1,600 cases, so a 4 times increase in 1 year. The dealer for my case had 7 overdoses. The guys were dead with a needle still stuck in their arm. So they would inject, and they wouldn't even pull the needle out. They were just sitting there, they were dead. That's how fast and how powerful those doses were. When I analyzed the exhibits that the guy was selling, it was 60 times the therapeutic dose is what the guy was selling. Okay, the dealer, when he first was sold by his dealer, okay, so the higher up the chain, the guy called and said, "Hey, bring one of your users. You got to try this out. This is good stuff. This is potent." Okay, not telling him it was fentanyl. They drove from the eastern shore of Maryland up to Philadelphia. Okay, they gave the user some of the heroin, which ended up being fentanyl. The guy overdosed and died. Okay, so they threw him in a dumpster, and the dealer called his wife and said, "Hey, if you're looking for Johnny, he's in this alley. You better come get him before Wednesday trash pickup. Okay, if you want his body." Okay, that was the case I was analyzing. During that time too, I'll talk about the antidote. Okay, for fentanyl. Okay, the naloxone. You guys will probably, if you've heard about that. Okay, it counteracts the effects of opium and heroin. At the time, the only thing was a needle. So you had to inject yourself with a needle full of the antidote. My lab director was not so keen on us injecting each other with fentanyl, or the naloxone. So his solution was, I was working with an air purifying respirator, double gloved in the fume hood, and I had a second chemist stand about 6 feet away, watching me while I worked, and if I collapsed, they were to call 911. So that was the solution at the time. And hope they got me to the hospital in 10 minutes before I was brain dead. So, needless to say, I earned my pay that day. But now it's nasal, okay? So you squirt something up your nose and it counteracts the effects. So it's a lot better now. Okay, here we are. Here's naloxone. So it talks about the history of it. So it used to be a needle or IV, okay? So 1971, that's what we had. I remember I did the case in 2006. So we didn't even have the auto injector, kind of like you have for an EpiPen. They have the auto injectors. They didn't have those. So we had to stab each other with needles. So like I said, my laboratory director was not so hot on that. And then about 2015, they have the nasal spray. So all of our special agents are issued naloxone. Okay, they're trained, they carry it on the person. Okay, they're not carrying it to go find a person on the street and try to revive them. It's for them when they do drug deals and they're doing hand-to-hand exchanges, if they get dosed, for them to give to them or their partners. Okay, so not a substitute for the paramedics. Okay, so the problem we have now, like remember I said that people get hooked on pharmaceuticals. So what we see now are these are fake pharmaceuticals that are made by drug dealers. Okay, either they're shipped in or they're made here in the US. Okay, so that's a fake oxycodone tablet. And you see here is another fake pharmaceutical that has legitimate markings that if you were to buy it off the street, you would think it's a pill, but it actually contains fentanyl. So here's a better example. Legit pills on the left, the fake one is on the right. So you see that they actually buy the same dye, the same press, to make fake pharmaceuticals. Now the color's a little off, but the price is a whole lot cheaper. So instead of $30 a tablet for an Oxycodone 30, you're paying $4 or $5 a tablet. And if you're a user, you're like, I'm just going to roll the dice. And you hope the guy mixed it properly. Because remember I said it's 50 times stronger than heroin. So you could have a pill that has 1 milligram and get high, and the next person has a pill that has 3 milligrams and you're dead. So you just hope that it gets mixed properly. And a lot of times, you know what they use for a mixer? The magic bullet, or a powder or a blender you find at Walmart. So they just throw a whole bunch of lactose or other white powder sugar in, mix in the drug, hit it for about 30 seconds. It's good enough. Now let's start making our tablets. Okay, it's not I'm gonna think of Pfizer. Okay, it's not like them. It's not like they have the industrial V mixer that are letting it go for hours to make sure everything's homogeneous, and are doing quality control coming off the line. Okay, I'll show you some pictures of laboratories here in a minute where they're making these fake pharmaceuticals. So the problem for us, and I can tell you exactly what this chemist did, because I would do the same thing. For me, if I got that as an exhibit, that's a kilo of cocaine. Okay, I would take my trusty knife or scalpel, I cut along the edges, just like you see there. If you've never seen a kilo of cocaine before, it's various layers of plastic, tape, grease, mustard, oil, dryer sheets, you name it, they put it around the outside to throw off the dogs. Okay, so you're talking about probably 15 different layers of plastic there. And so that's marked exactly like a kilogram of cocaine. Now I cut that open, okay? It has markings on the outside. All your kilo bricks usually have an imprint. It's almost like a logo, like if you're gonna buy Ford or Chevy, okay? If you like this kilo, come back to us. That's the marking, the brand. Okay, that looks exactly like a kilo of cocaine. Now look at the amount of powder that's on that paper. Remember I said what the lethal dose was? We've had a couple uh-oh moments in DEA laboratories where, oh, it's a kilo of cocaine. Let me cut this thing open, plop it on my desk, go over to the infrared, and oh no, it's 90% pure fentanyl. Okay, let's everyone evacuate. We got to decontaminate the whole laboratory. That's happened. Okay. So just to show you, this is what a real kilo of cocaine. That's like one of my cases. That's what a kilo of cocaine looks like. It looks the same. And I can tell you what, these guys are they're within 2 grams. A kilo is exactly 1,000 grams. Okay, a kilo of cocaine is usually around 998 to 999. They're never 1,001. They never go over. Okay, they're not going to give you more drugs. They give you just a little bit less. But they're for putting stuff in a press, that's pretty accurate. You're talking your uncertainty is pretty good. Dr. Scott, pretty good uncertainty. Okay. I said flashbacks, putting things in a spreadsheet. Okay. So here's a real life example. This is coming across the southwest border from Mexico. A guy smuggling in 11 kilos of 20% pure fentanyl, which equals 2.2 kilos of pure, right? Now that would kill about 1.1 million people. So each kilo of pure fentanyl can overdose about 500,000 people. So just let that sink in for a minute. So the guy catches, the border guy sees an abnormality in the x-ray, comes over. What's he do? He grabs his trusty pocket knife, starts drilling in the kilo to do his cocaine test kit. Okay, that's what it's colored. We call it the Scott's reagent. Okay, so it's cobalt thiocyanate plus a little acid. Okay, it turns from pink to blue with the presence of cocaine. Look, it even turned positive in the test kit. He took a photo. Hey, look, I've got cocaine. That's not cocaine. It was a false positive. That's fentanyl. Look how much, remember we talked about lethal doses, 2 milligrams? How much is on his knife? Okay? I hope he didn't use that to cut his sandwich later that day. So, I mean, now it's a lot better, okay? If we have unknown packages come in, we're no longer supposed to field test. We have to do, put it in a glove box and do our test that way. You can't, they're not doing this anymore. Okay, because that, like I said, that looks exactly like a kilo of cocaine would, but it's not. All right, so another big problem. We're going to talk about drug analogs. I just spent a lot of time talking to you about regular fentanyl. Regular fentanyl is controlled. Okay, it's a Schedule II substance. There are 5 drug schedules in the United States, 1 through 5. 2 through 5 are prescription. Okay, so if you see some with a C and then a Roman numeral, that tells you what schedule it is. Okay, you're never going to see a C and a 1 because those are totally illegal. Okay, that's your methamphetamines, crack cocaine, heroin, marijuana. Okay, federally. I saw some people just kind of look down to the side. I'm using my forensic ability right now. All right, I'm not here to talk about that. So you see fentanyl is right in the middle. That's our middle structure right there. That's what fentanyl, that's the chemical structure for fentanyl. 4-in-APP is the major precursor. So you add that and a little propionyl chloride and you've got fentanyl. Okay, that's a one-step reaction. So that's the major precursor. Now, if you just look, you're extending or shortening that sidearm, right? Each of those is a different drug. Okay, that's just changing the length of that arm. You're making different chemical structures and different drugs, which means each of those has to be listed individually on our Controlled Substance Act, right? So right there, you've got 4 different fentanyl analogs. That means you have to list each one on our schedule 4 different times. How many different ones are possible? Over 1,400 different ones just for fentanyl. That's not talking about any of the other synthetic opiates that are out there. Needless to say, DEA is hiring, and we have some job security. Okay? So here's some other ones that you may have heard of. 3-methylfentanyl. The only difference between 3-methylfentanyl and fentanyl is that little methyl group on the middle ring there. That's 100 times more powerful than fentanyl. So let that sink in for a minute. The bad one is the one right next to it, carfentanyl. Carfentanyl, worldwide legitimate production 2 years ago was 17 grams. 17 grams for the entire world. Okay, what is it used for? Doing surgery on elephants, rhinos, hippos. Okay, actually they don't even use that anymore because it's too powerful. That is 1,000 times stronger than fentanyl. 1 gram will kill 500,000 people. That's a sugar packet. For you guys that are, any non-scientists in the crowd? Okay, that's a sugar packet. Okay. 2 years ago, there was a seizure of 1 kilogram coming from China into Canada. That 1 kilogram was enough to kill every single person in Canada. It was smuggled in ink toner cartridge refills. Okay. When I was down in Australia giving a talk, I talked about some of the new psychoactive substances on a Monday. Tuesday, they had their first seizure of like 3 of them. I talked about carfentanyl on Thursday. Friday, they had their first seizure of carfentanyl. They said, stop talking about new drugs. But they had 4.1 grams come in. Okay, that's 4,000 kilos of heroin. That's the equivalent. So you see why the bad guys are doing it. The problem is, how do you mix it without killing all your users? So these are some of the other fentanyl analogs that are out there. Now, remember I talked about NPSs. What that stands for is new psychoactive substances. That's a catch-all category for designer drugs. We don't like to use the term designer drugs, but we say in the industry NPS, new psychoactive substances. So this shows you each year how many new drugs were invented. Okay, so between 2009 and 16, 7 years, 739 new designer drugs were invented. Okay, not all those are opiates. A lot of those are cannabinoids, cathinones, stimulants. Okay, so tryptamines. You got all these different categories, but some of those are synthetic opiates as well too. So they're contributing to the problem. Okay. So this is probably besides the lethal dose slide, this is the one that will kind of grab hold. So you can see here, this is the number of fentanyl exhibits. This is total number of fentanyl exhibits submitted to forensic laboratories across the country, not just DEA, state, local, city. Okay, this is all forensic laboratories across the country. So remember I said 2006, we saw that big bump? Doesn't look like a big bump, does it? But we were worried. That's a 4 times increase. That was, that bump was due to 7 kilos that came in from Mexico. 7 kilos caused that problem. And I'll show you pictures of the laboratory here in a minute. But you see about 2013, it starts to skyrocket. That number in 2017 is much more than that. It's still going exponential. The reason why you see it kind of level off is that's our backlog. We have not caught up to all our 2017 exhibits yet. So between 13 and 15, that was a 1,500% increase in 2 years, the number of fentanyl we've seen. I'll talk about that. It's a good question. Like I said, it's fully synthetic. So if you buy a kilogram, that's worth 50 kilos of heroin. Okay, it's cheaper. Wholesale price of a kilo of heroin in New York City goes for $90,000 US. So if you want to buy 1 kilo of heroin in New York City, you can mail order a kilo of fentanyl from China for as little as $3,000. So 3,000 times 90, or sorry, 90 times 50. So 4.5 million, or more than that. So it's much cheaper. I don't get to do math. I do math top of my head. So, yeah, I used to be. I'm an instructor now. So cheaper, easier to smuggle. Where else was I going with that? You can make more doses for that. So that's kind of the reason why we're seeing it. Oh, also, one other reason. There's a new manufacturing method. Makes it a lot easier. So there's the traditional ginseng method, which is all pharmaceutical methods are made that way. And then the newer one is much easier. We almost call it the one-pot way of making fentanyl. So you used to have to do an azeotropic distillation. So I used to be a chemist, okay? And now you just use some molecular sieves to get rid of the water. And you can do it in one pot. So much easier. And the precursors were not controlled until recently. So that's kind of like 4 different reasons things got in. So, are you sure you weren't on my panel when I did my senior thesis? Okay. Okay, but that's the problem. You see, it's still skyrocketing, even now. Even now. We'll have end of numbers soon, end of year numbers soon for 18. But I can guarantee you they're still going exponential. Okay, so here we go. Here's, you have to forgive me, I took out most of the reaction procedures. I don't want to teach you how to make drugs here tonight. Okay, I like keeping myself in business. I don't want to keep it that much. Okay, if you're really curious, you can go on the internet. But all the arrows, I took out all the reaction conditions. I just whited them out. Okay, this was the Jensen method. This is the way that was invented in the 1960s, and all your pharmaceutical-made fentanyl is going to be made this way. Okay, all legitimate production is made with this style. Okay, and in fact, here was our first fentanyl clandestine laboratory at Dow Pharmaceuticals, or Dow. Okay, this was the guy who first made clandestine fentanyl at work. Okay, his problem was, just like the rest of us chemists, we can make it, but who are we going to sell it to? So he went to his janitor with a little 3x5 index card full of a gram sample and said, here, give this to any drug dealers you know and ask them if they want to do business. So what did the janitor do? He went to the police. Okay, long story short, the guy got caught. But it was funny, the way he wanted to get paid. He wanted to get paid in Canadian gold coins and South African gold cougarants. He watched way too many movies. Okay, that's how he wanted to get paid. Not dollars, not non-sequential small bills, gold cougarants is how he wanted to get paid. Okay, so this is actually a recreation of that reaction in our New York lab. Okay, so now we have the new one we call the Siegfried. Okay, it's basically the one pot. Again, I took off all the reaction conditions. What I wanted to show you was, so fentanyl's controlled. But until recently, you could go on through Sigma or any other chemical supplier and buy 4-NA-PP, the main precursor. So all you do is mix that with propionyl chloride. I left propionyl chloride on there. I didn't give the rest of the conditions. But propionyl chloride plus 4-NA-PP would make you fentanyl. Okay. Then we started controlling 4-NA-PP. And guess what the guys did? They went back 2 steps and bought NPP and made their own 4-NA-PP. Okay? And then we started controlling that. Then they go back another step. So we're always playing catch up with these guys. We're at the point now with methamphetamine, the guys are using benzene. They're using benzene and propionyl chloride to start making methamphetamine. No way we're controlling benzene. Okay? We've got to the point where we're backtracked that far. But so this is part of the answer to your questions. This is a much easier reaction. This is the reaction recreated in the laboratory. So it's a one-pot way of making, or one container way of making fentanyl. So no special chemical apparatus, no special chemistry know-how, no much shorter reaction. You get this done in about, if you start with NPP, you could probably get done in less than a day. To go from the beginning all the way to the end. No, you guys cannot do this as your research project. Use another drug. Don't use this one. Hot mic. Red team go. Red team. Okay. So dangerous. This is one of the cartel cooks. They know how bad it is. This is their air purifying respirator clogged with 95% pure fentanyl. So to give you a little clue for those that have never worn an air purifying respirator, there's a 1 millimeter thick piece of butyl rubber diaphragm between your lungs and the air. So that just any fold or crease in that little diaphragm and you're dead many times over. So again, this is from one of the operators that were making this drug illegally. For the rest of the chemists in the group, so how do you modify your reaction? You could do modified NPP plus aniline to make your modified 4-NA-PP to make your 3-methylphenol, which again is 100 times stronger than regular fentanyl. So it's not that hard to, and I guarantee you probably this modified NPP is not controlled or watched. Because again, it takes a process to watch all these chemicals. All right, so other opioids, that's just fentanyls. There's other synthetic opioids out there. We have the AH, MT, and the W series. Okay, I love this photo. One of them was smuggled in. It's badger repellent. That's what they marketed it as. So if you have a problem with badgers, but that's how they would smuggle it in. That's how they would, just like they have spice and bath salts. They're not really spice or bath salts. That's just how they market it to get it in. You can't say, here's my new designer drug. You have to put it in something. So this was badger repellent, was one of them. The W18, that was reported. It turns out that's not actually 10,000 times the potency of morphine. That actually ended up being a bad scientific paper. But Canada and Idaho have controlled W18 as one of the synthetic opiates. All right, so starting to wrap up here a little bit. This is the DEA laboratory system, okay? So where I was the Mid-Atlantic Laboratory. You see right there, we covered West Virginia, Maryland, and you've got labs in New York, Miami, Dallas, Chicago, San Francisco, and San Diego. Those are your big ones. We also, you see, says right below the Mid-Atlantic, says Special Testing and Research Lab. Now, with all these designer drugs, let's say you're a forensic chemist, you pick up your heat seal, you think it's heroin or whatever, you start analyzing it, and no match found. Okay, we call that winning the lottery. Okay, so if you're a forensic chemist, you basically get evaluated on how many samples you crank out a month. You're supposed to crank out like at least 32 samples a month, somewhere around that number, which means you check out, analyze, write a report for 32 exhibits. So to give you an instance, a marijuana will take you a half hour, counts as one. I had 50,000 tablets of ecstasy, took me 3 weeks, still counted as one. Okay, it doesn't matter how big, how small, okay, your exhibit still counts the same. So what happens if you get one of these new designer drugs, new designer fentanyls, and it's not in your search library? What happens? You go back to doing organic chemistry and experimental methods. Structural elucidation, okay? We don't really have that much time for it, so we'll usually ship our sample off to our special testing laboratory. And then we have guys that are on staff that will do IR, mass spec, NMR, and actually do the structural elucidation of these new compounds. And then we have organic chemists on staff that will actually make these compounds from scratch and run a comparison to see if they match, okay? There's also other drug standard companies that are out there that will charge you about $300 per 10 milligrams, enough for a shooter for a mass spec. But we have guys on staff that their whole job is to make controlled standards for us and the state laboratories. So one of the things that DEA does is if we come across one of these new drugs, we make a search database and we'll put it out through the internet to all the state and local labs. Because state and local labs are not going to spend $300 for 10 milligrams for all these hundreds of different compounds. So we have a database that they can download from the internet for their mass spectrometers and infrared that they can get for free. So this is a picture of my old lab. So every 5 years they get a tech refresh. So no instrument is more than 5 years old, except for the NMR. NMR is about 10. I know you guys are looking for a new one. We just got rid of our old one, so you can't have it. But yeah, that's one of the newer mass specs you see there, infrared. UPLC, CE, QTOF, DART. The only thing we don't have, Dr. Mahoney, is ICP. We don't do anything ICP. Polarimetry, GC, IRD, we'll do all that stuff. But laboratories. So let's talk about some of the clandestine laboratories. This is my favorite photo of a clandestine laboratory. I used to do meth labs, right? So I've been in dozens and dozens of meth laboratories. Trash everywhere, okay? It's usually in a single wide trailer, and there's just stuff everywhere, right? I have never seen, my laboratory at DEA is not this clean. Let me show you a photo. Look at this. Never see this. He's got a periodic table. I mean, he's got a glassware cabinet. And I like this one too. Now, this guy's got OCD. His chemicals are arranged by height. Okay? What's that? Yeah, that's this. All right, so I've never seen a lab this clean, ever. No forensics, or no clandestine drug lab is ever this clean, okay? But this is what he's getting ready to do. This is what he ordered and hadn't unwrapped yet. Look at the size of the guy's arm next to that round bottom flask. Okay? This is a lab that produced 7 kilos that caused a 4 times increase. Okay? The Mexicans caught him early. This is what and this is the stir bar. Let me see if I still have a picture of the stir bar here. That's the stir bar. Okay, that's what he was getting ready to do. Okay, if he had started cranking out, we would have had the opiate crisis we're having now in 2006. Okay, so we would have had this 10 years ago, 12 years ago, had this taken off, had this lab not been caught. Okay, so there's some of the precursors he was getting. That's aniline. So he had his NPP and he was making his foray in APP from that. So he had the sieves too, okay, to make sure everything was uniform size. So 20 mesh sieves. Okay, so level A, this is the suit you see here. So if we go into a fentanyl drug lab, this is what we wear. This is our normal meth lab suits cost about $30 a copy. Okay, so we get suited up in a chemical suit going to meth lab, $30, no big deal, right? You break a suit, no big deal. This guy's about $4,000. Okay, so this is what we wear to go inside fentanyl labs because the toxicity. Fentanyl, LSD, PCP, this is what we'll wear. So angel dust, LSD labs, just because they're transdermal and they're so toxic, we'll wear these suits, wear those, and then we have our SCBA, self-contained breathing apparatus. Now those are awesome. We just got these this year. These have built-in telemetry. Okay, so it actually will send a signal with a battery pack out to the command post, and if you have a laptop outside, will tell your team leader how much air you have, and based on your breathing rate, tell you how much air you got left. Okay, he can also send a signal like, hey, get out now, and there's a little heads-up display in the mask, and there's little lights in there. Let's say you'll see a red blinking light saying get out. You also have our air monitor readings. So this is one of our air monitors, does lower explosive limit, oxygen content, phosphine gas, and ammonia. Okay, we'll detect those 4 things in this guy right here. This Bluetooths into the backpack to shoot out to the command post. Okay, so you don't even have to, you just wear this, you can just go about your business. It'll alarm and shake if something's wrong, but your command post will actually can monitor your readings without you having to do this. Okay, so that's built in. Our comms are Bluetooth in too, so you wear a radio inside the suit, and you just talk normally. The microphone's in your mask, and it's all Bluetooth out. You can go about 1 kilometer away. How many guys don't do metric here? I give her back all the time. Okay, that's what, 0.6? 0.6 miles? We say it in freedom units. Is that right? Okay. That's when I work with cops. That's what they say. I say that's in Celsius. They said, what's that in F? I go, what do you mean F? They go, for freedom unit. Okay. This I gotta love. This is near Seattle, Washington. This was a guy. So some of our agents in San Francisco were doing gram quantity buys of fentanyl. They end up finding the guy. This is his laboratory in his house. So yeah, you can see like that's part of the forensics is going through the guy's notebook and seeing how much he's going to make. So he actually was doing some real chemistry, right? You don't see that in a meth lab. I can tell you that. You're lucky the guy has all his teeth. And you see the bottom right-hand corner, that's the raid team going in. Most of the time, the raid team, they're going to wear almost like a fighter pilot suit or a race car suit that's Nomex for the fire or explosion hazard. Okay, because fire will kill you quicker than chemicals. Okay, and you can't really fight inside a chemical suit. Okay, and it's hard to shoot and everything else. You lose all your peripheral vision. But for the fentanyl lab, they went in level B, we call that. So they went in full chemical suit, SCBAs, and actually did the raid that way. And you see the guy, he's got what we call the key. It fits any door, okay? The master key, they got the RAM right here, okay? And this is a chemist and an agent in the level A suits, okay? So they actually go in, do the assessment, processing, bring all the stuff out. We always send a chemist and an agent because there's a lot of times where the guys will go clear the house, and it's not actually clear. You flip a mattress, and oh, it's a surprise bad guy. And so you don't want two chemists inside the house trying to fight a bad guy. I mean, I wouldn't mind, but. So mostly what we see is this, tableting labs. So they're going to order the chemical or the drugs from overseas, buy a whole bunch of tablet binder or sugars, and then has some food coloring, and you see that he's got that thing with the wheel. That's a tablet press right there. So those tablet presses legitimately are supposed to be tracked by the DEA. They all have DEA licenses. They're all tracked. But those will crank out anywhere between 1,200 tablets an hour and 5,000 tablets an hour. So and every time that cranks out, think about $20. $20, $20, $20. Every time that thing makes a tablet. Okay, it's between 20 and 40. Those Tupperware you see there, that's this powder that's mixed up. So that's got the fentanyl plus the tablet binder plus the coloring. Okay. This one's in Los Angeles. Shared a building with a preschool. Okay. He had 2 of these tablet presses you see there. One more was in a box ready to be unwrapped. So not only did he have 1 tablet press going for anywhere between 1,000 and 5,000 tablets an hour, he had 3. Okay. So I'll show you some more photos of that one come up here. Because actually, this is a photograph inside the suit. So this is one of my chemist friends. And he was actually on this lab. And he had a camera inside a suit and was taking the picture through the visor. That's why it looks a little foggy. Okay. But you can see the amount of, see all the powder residue everywhere? Okay. Again, what's the lethal dose? 2 milligrams. Okay, powder goes everywhere with these tablet presses. I'll show you a photo here in a second. But you see all the different colors he's got for different fake pharmaceuticals. Okay, so here is the drug, and then he's got all the different colors for the different tablets. Okay, oh, did I skip one? No, okay. Okay, that's his tablet binder on the right-hand side. And I just want you to see the picture of the fridge open, but look at all the powder on the ground. Okay, that's all just that tablet press running. Every time it stamps a tablet, powder goes into the air. In Mexico, I didn't have time to add it because I just got it, and I don't think I'm able to put it out yet. One of the cartels in Mexico, it shows the guy, he's in a level B suit with a respirator and plastic around it with a tablet press running. They have undercover video of this tablet press running. And powder's just going everywhere, and the guy's in a protective suit doing this. Okay. Again, different colorings you see there for the different pharmaceuticals, fake pharmaceuticals. I'm sorry. There's the tablet press ready to go. The third one he just bought. Okay. Same thing. More. He had other designer drugs too. Alpha PVP or Flocka. Have you guys heard of that? That's one of the other designer drugs. That is more your cathinones. So you hear about the zombie drug, the face-eating drug. It's one of those. I can do a whole other 3 hours on that sucker, don't you? Okay. The dosage unit in the Northeast they call fingers, and that's what you see in these bags here. So the bad guys will import the powder, mix it with a sugar, and press it into what they call a finger. It's about this big, and that's the dosage units they sell to the street dealers who will take that finger and break it up into powder and put in little Ziploc bags. Okay, so it's a convenient way to sell from a mid-level dealer down to a low-level dealer. Okay, so that's what you see here. It's a better photo of what we call fingers. And over here is what they were mixing it with. So you see the magic bullets and all the powder with the drug, the sugars, over on this other table over here. It happened in New Hampshire or Massachusetts. I can't remember which. The guys were doing this. They had a big, almost like Scarface powder pile. Okay, from the movie Scarface, you ever seen that? It had a big pile of powder. The raid team threw in a flashbang grenade, landed right in the middle of the powder. So a bunch of the cops had to go to the hospital. But here you go. This is, remember I said magic bullets? This guy has, I don't know why he didn't spend $300 on a good blender. Okay, or like $1,000 on an industrial pharmaceutical blender. But you see all the magic bullets he's got there. And lactose, that's the powder he was mixing with the fentanyl to dilute it. Okay. That what I'm trying to show in this photo right there is that press. So once they add the lactose and drug together, they'll put it inside that metal block and press it. And that's what makes those fingers. Okay? And you'll see here, this is the picture of the jack. Oh, nope, sorry, one more. That's the powders, pre-mixed. There's the level A suits again. This is, I know it's blurry, but again, it's through a suit. That's the car jack with an improvised press. So they take that press with the car jack it up, and it'll press those fingers for sale. Okay. All right. So if you get more money, this is the industrial pharmaceutical mixer. Okay. See where that hole is right there? It's kind of a V. And you put your powders in there, and that thing spins. And it makes sure that your mixture is homogeneous. Okay, so you're not putting it inside a magic bullet blender. Okay, and then you have your tablet machine, which is this guy right here. We ran it with fluorescent dye, fluorescent powder. So we ran it for about a minute, and then put a black light up to it, and you could see the powder, how much it just gets in the air and just goes everywhere. So again, we have to be protected when we go into these laboratories when we do it this way. This is a tablet coater. So once you press your tablet with your logo, you toss it at this thing spins, and it's got basically a hair dryer. Then you put, it's almost like a wax or another plasticky type coating, and you put it in there and it coats the tablets and dries them, so they have like it almost looks like a time release capsule. So they're getting, each of these things cost like $1,000 a piece. So they can make these tablets look pretty good. So what do we do in the field? I'm wrapping up now. In the field, we have handheld Raman and infrared. So these things are good that you can actually shoot through packages. Okay, one of them we have now will shoot through a 200-liter drum. Problem is, it doesn't do mixtures very well. Okay, if you have 90% sugar, 10% fentanyl, it's going to say 90%. It's going to say sugar. Okay, which is a false negative. Same thing with our color test too, right? If we have a color test and it's 90% sugar, 10% fentanyl, or 2%, 1% fentanyl, you may not see that color change in the field. So anything that's unknown or a negative gets sent to the lab anyway. So guess what happens to our backlog? It does this. There's one out here now. It's Raman and FTIR in one instrument. So it doesn't really cost you any, it's not any savings, because it's about $100,000, and both the ones individually are $50,000. So, but you can put them together. I guess it saves weight. Then we have the handheld mass specs now. It doesn't do separation. It's not gas chromatograph. It won't separate mixtures, but you can do like a search on it. Say I'm looking for this structure. You do a wipe, and it will find it. All right, a lot of people contributed to this report, presentation. Most notably, guys at headquarters, our Office of Diversion section. But a lot of other chemists helped me out. I stole a lot of information from them, a lot of photos from labs that I don't go on anymore. But I wanted to thank them. And that is my email address, both of them, and my cell phone number. I'm overseas about 30 weeks a year. So if you have Viber, WhatsApp, Line, any of those things, you can get me on that, and I will write you back. Okay, maybe 3 a.m. your time because it's 3 p.m. my time. Okay, so like I said, I'm on the road all the time. But thank you guys for paying attention. Hopefully you got something out of it. Is there any questions?
And since we are streaming, I am going to torture you with the microphone because
yeah.
anybody who's watching on the stream needs to be able to hear.
Have you guys had a lot of incidences where you've run where it's you found Narcan resistant fentanyl?
Nothing really Narcan resistant. What we have run into is people that have taken so much that you can't just give them one dose of Narcan. You have to give them like 50 doses of Narcan to counteract how much they took. So we've come across that. Narcan's always going to work. The other thing that's for Narcan I didn't mention is when you give Narcan to someone and they come off their high, they're going to get angry. And they're going to try to fight you. So there's that. So nothing resistant, but you have the more powerful fentanyls, you need more doses of it.
Okay.
Have you lost any of your colleagues to the other side?
Not so far as manufacturing. We have had people go and work for defense attorneys as experts. That's what, when we say the other side, kind of means for us. But nobody actually making drugs. We haven't found anyone for DEA, as far as I know, that have gone to the other side. State and local labs I can't answer to, but for us, no, there's nobody for us. But like I said, we've had people, I've gone against former DEA colleagues in court. So that's the other side for me. I know. No, I know. No, not for that.
Now, your colleagues and you're background checked, and I would imagine also there's
Yep.
a bit of, I would imagine even polygraph as
Well, we get
much stuff as you're doing, and I would imagine your financials are watched pretty
Yes.
closely too.
Yes. So every 5 years they go back 7 to 10.
Okay.
So initially, when I got hired on, you do the hire on packet, your analysis, interview, background check. And then every 5 to keep my clearance. Like you said, they go through finances. They talk to all your neighbors. They go back 7 years. They talk to your friends' friends. I mean, it's an involved process. And they give you, as soon as your background check is due, you have 3 days to fill it out and send it back in. Doesn't matter where you are. They're like, your background check is due within 3 days. Here's the packet. Here's 50 pages. Get it back to us. And then your interview with them is about 3.5 hours. And then they go interview all your coworkers, all your neighbors, and you list 3 friends, and they go back and they talk to them. And who else knows Jerry? And so they probably, I don't know if Dr. Gratz or Dr. Scott or any of you guys, if they came and talked to you guys. They did come to you? Hopefully it was good things. Your check's in the mail.
Now, I kid around a lot with my students because I also have a lot of students that go to DOD, but I kid around a lot with my students that there's a lot of questions we get asked on those security clearances that I like to be able to answer not to my knowledge is my favorite answer. And those are answers about drugs, about alcohol, about integrity.
Yeah.
And, when you're rolling into class hungover or altered, that's something that we've got to be able to talk about. So it's something to be kind of aware of if you're thinking of going law enforcement,
Yeah.
Department of Defense, that sort of thing. It's
Yeah,
a real
not just DEA with
situation.
drugs, like you're saying. It's like I have a lot of friends DOD too. They will ask you about drug and alcohol and all these other uses. Have you ever done? When was the last time you used all that stuff?
And you don't lie.
Yeah.
And occasional recreational use in your past probably won't disqualify you, but regular use is problematic.
Well, for us, recreational is.
Well, recreational's right off for you. DOD's
us,
getting a little
yeah.
desperate.
Yeah, but yeah.
Well, it's getting harder and harder to find never
Yeah.
as an answer.
Well, it's the problem for us too. So for us on the stand, if we get found not telling the truth on the stand, we're done. We're fired. You're not salvaged. You can't work cases anymore. If you, it's the same thing too. Like if I'm doing evidence analysis and I never worked with 2 cases open, because what happens if I do one of these, or I transpose a case number from this case to this case, and I don't catch it, okay, and it wasn't an intentional mistake, or what happens if I'm having a bad day and I'm just typing, and I go, oh, that was cocaine and it was heroin, that's done. I don't have a job. Okay, so it's detail oriented. And you've got to be truthful, like you said. You can't.
And you have to keep your notebook according to the format that
Yes,
you were told.
a single line initial. Actually, it's not even a notebook anymore. It's all digital.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, one more. Another question. You had one. Someone said had one too.
I have kind of 2 questions. So one, when you were in your undergrad, did you ever do any sort of internships or anything? And with your job that you first started, do you think today we would need a master's degree, or would we still be okay with just a bachelor's?
Okay. So I did have an internship. I interned with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms my junior going into senior year. So that helped out a lot. But yeah, I was before the CSI craze, right? So there are a lot of people go into it. But that being said, a lot of people are hiring. You can still get on with the bachelor's, because I used to be involved with hiring. But it is more difficult. But what we find is people that watch CSI and go into just the forensic section don't last very long usually, because they have this idealized way of what forensics is. Okay, forensic chemistry it's analytical chemistry, and it's cranking widgets 8 hours a day. You're not out on the boat with the gun on the side, doing tool mark exams and everything else, or doing DNA and solving crimes in a half hour. Okay, it's a lot of, I'm going to weigh this baggie, I'm going to fill this vial, I'm going to run this test, I'm going to write this report day after day after day. So people last about 2 or 3 years, and they're like, I'm bored. Okay, and I suggest if you want to get into what I do, it's chemistry. It's all chemistry. So it's not forensics. I mean, people can do it, but you have 30 credit hours of chemistry anyway. So why not just finish the chemistry degree? And it's mostly, for what I do, it's mostly analytical chemistry. So even though I had to battle, I did a lot of organic while I was here. But it's mostly analytical. So you still can go with a bachelor's.
And we're all kind of giggling as faculty because we remember that bandwagon and our very conscious choice as faculty not to jump on the bandwagon, because we felt we could suit our students' needs better for the long term with a very solid foundational chemistry degree, and then let students specialize in their internships and as they went forward.
But there's a place for it. If you want to do other forensics,
absolutely.
Like toxicology, tool marks,
we were a little
post-blast.
too small of a department to go that way, and I think we're all kind of glad we didn't at the time.
Well, let me know if you guys are hiring.
Yeah. Any other questions? Yep.
I'm just curious how you all dispose of the samples that you not only collect but make. Is it just non-halogenated waste, or?
Well, we do separate. We have Dr. Gratz, aqueous and halogenated. We do separate those. We do have hazardous waste pickup, but for our samples, our evidence, it gets incinerated. So we go to an incinerator and it gets disposed of that way. Yeah. But no, it's I can't go into details of it, but.
Well, we could probably ask questions all night. I'm
Sure.
just curious, as the caseload is increasing, the instrumental requirements are increasing. Are you seeing the budget increasing accordingly, or are the state, local, federals responding to the crisis, putting their money where their mouth is, or not?
It depends. Yeah, there's some of the states, like I know, well, I can tell you after Massachusetts had that big dry labbing incident.
Mm-hmm.
So if you guys don't know what dry labbing is, it's like, hey, there's a heat seal full of green plant material. It's marijuana. I'm going to pass it on. There's some state labs that got in trouble for what we call dry labbing, like taking stuff out, weighing it.
And didn't pretty much everybody that had been found guilty during that get to appeal their case pretty much?
Yeah. Actually, we had to do it when I first got on for West Virginia had a case of it, and we had to reanalyze all of their drug exhibits. But after that, Massachusetts built 4 new crime labs, I think it was. We're expanding. We're trying to now. I know we were going to ask for more. We had a big year about 2004 where we built 5 brand new laboratories, like state of the art. And with the opiate crisis now's the time to strike with the iron's hot. And I know we're asking for more money. I know, like I said, for instrumental wise, for what we have, I mean, we can't. The instruments are keeping up what the people is. We just have to hire more people. Right. Build more labs. Now they're talking about building other labs like Denver and other locations. We have smaller satellite labs, but I mean, FBI has 1 lab. It's here in Quantico. We've got 9. So.
All right. Well, I'm going to turn the mic over to the Virginia Local Section President, Kathleen Sink. She's got a presentation to make.
Thank you again, Jerry. That was a very
no
interesting talk. So let's all thank Jerry one more time.
Thank you, guys.
So it is a Virginia section tradition to present the Jefferson Cup to our guest speakers to say thank you for being our guest speaker this
awesome.
evening for our section meeting.
Thank you. Oh, awesome.
So thank you again, everyone, for coming. I just want to make a quick announcement that November 9th, we're going to have our next section meeting, and it's going to be at Longwood University. So I would invite you to come. It's going to be about beer and the science of beer. So hope everyone has a safe travel back home tonight. Thank you again.
Oh, I have actually a presentation for you guys, too. 1 second.
And any local section members, I believe in your inbox right now, you do have your ballot for the slate of officers for the Virginia local section, so please do vote. The section's always looking for more people to take on some new leadership roles, younger chemist committee, senior chemist committee, women's chemist committee, and all kinds of leadership roles. So please, if you're not already involved in the section, please consider getting involved. We're also going to be looking for a new coordinator for Chemists Celebrate Earth Week, possibly in the near future, and some more people to be doing some more outreach activities, particularly get the outreach activities out of Richmond. It's called the Virginia local section, not the Richmond local section. So if anyone's interested in doing chemical outreach for the ACS in their region, in Fredericksburg maybe, please get in touch with Kathleen or myself, and we'll certainly be able to hook you up with resources and support.
All right, I got a couple gifts.
Okay.
So for you, you're on wearing your Narcos hat.
Awesome!
That's what our basket.
Excellent.
So thank you very much for the gift. This is our challenge coin for Clandestine Laboratories. So for
excellent.
military and law enforcement, when you have someone, you have a challenge coin. If they don't have their coin on you, or their gamma coin, they don't have yours, you're supposed to buy a beer or vice versa. So thank you very much. And Sharples, thank you for the invite. Coffee cup with all the badges through the years.
Excellent.
Okay. And where'd Allison go? Oh, here you go. Come on. So while you're in class, you have your own DEA bullet pen.
Oh.
And patch.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Well, thank you to Jerry. Thank all of you for coming. How many of you came from a class that was not a chemistry class, just out of curiosity? Is this from Dr. Davidson's class? Or from which class? Awesome. Thank you so much for coming. And those of you that are from Germanna, if you have any interest at all in transferring for that third year for chemistry or biology, several of the faculty here, and we'd be happy to talk to you. So if you want to grab an email address before you leave, shake us down. Thank you again. Drive safely, and we'll see you next year.